All right, friends, we're continuing our conversation on lease-ups, but today we're going to be looking through the lens of a regional marketing coordinator. My guest, Kindle Baumgarten, is the regional marketing coordinator for Drucker and Falk, and she's also a longtime podcast listener. So I'm excited to have her on this side of the mic. You know, for many of us, we're looking at one lease-up project. That's usually enough, right? Well, Kindle and her team are working with many developers at a time, and so they're juggling multiple projects and have to give the focus and priority to each individual project as if it was their own. How do they do that? And how do they make sure that the developer story, those brand guidelines, and all the intricate details get woven into every single phase of the lease-up process, especially once it's time to hand the baton to the on-site team? I think you're going to love this perspective. Let's listen into my conversation with Kindle. My guest today, Kindle Baumgarten. I've already given you all an intro, but first of all, Kindle, I just want to welcome you to this side of the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. It's so great to be here. You know, Barbara, I have been loving just getting inspired by what you do with Sprout Marketing, your voice on social, and the podcast. So to be on this side recording with you is an absolute blast. I'm honored to be here.
Well, I'm so excited. And the first time that we met and you shared that with me, I was literally smiling for like the entire day because, you know, you record these things and you love hearing that you can make an impact and that, you know, now hearing all the cool things that you're doing in your career, which we're going to be digging into a little bit today. So I think we should just get started. I think it's so interesting as the regional marketing coordinator, you shared with me that you actually answer to quite a few people. Do you want to talk about that as it relates to a lease-up?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'd love to. So, in my role, you know, we're a support department. I work for a company called Drucker and Falk. So, we're a third-party management company. We manage communities all the way from pre-development to lease up to stabilized properties. And as a support department, we really have two clients. Our client is the actual developer or asset manager or ownership group that hires our company to manage their asset. And also another client that we serve is our operations teams. So our regional property managers, especially whenever they get assigned to a project in the pre-development stage, they're going to be responsible for executing hiring, training, all marketing, signage. So we really have a dual reporting role between the clients and the developers and our operations teams.
It really sounds like you are the bridge, you and your team, to make sure that all of that vision comes to life. And you and I offline had the extensive conversation about how this is something that's not always easy to juggle in your role, just because this is an important project for the developer. So can you talk a little bit about how you guys approach that when you have not one or two, maybe a handful of projects going at one time?
Yeah, you know, we wear so many different hats in our industry. And I think that everybody who, you know, not only just you and me, but your listeners here on the podcast and through Sprout, you know, we do work with a lot of different communities over the course of our career and sometimes over the course of a single day. And so it's easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle of, you know, each project on your to-do list just being another task you have to do and knock off the list. And to take a step back and think about the perspective of who we're working for, our developers, like this is truly their baby. This is it. This is their only project. And they've put so much time and years into this project. So, you know, they love it. It's their baby. To shift into that perspective and treat each project with that enthusiasm really goes a long way.
That's incredible. Okay, so Kendall, let me ask you a question. Do you have any tips or secrets on how you prepare to kind of juggle those different responsibilities? Like, I'm just curious if there's something that you found that works for you.
I wish there was an easy solution and an easy answer. You know, whenever, like, I am always someone who believes that there is no such thing as multitasking. That's just me personally. I just know it doesn't work for me. So when I am working on a project, I do try to, you know, close everything else out, put myself in the mindset of that project, think about the vision, think about the story. I have the brand guide in front of me. You know, if we're building a website or we're designing a social media page, I have the brand guide in front of me. I have my notes in front of me, so I can totally dial in and make sure that this vision for community A isn't overlapping with community B in my mind. And so I try to do that as best as I can.
When you and I were prepping for this call, the last time we talked, you actually shared a little about that. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that is such a great way, as we're switching in between tasks, having those brand guidelines in front of you and saying like, okay, I am right now in this mindset of this developer. This was their baby. This is their baby. And I'm really focused on that. I know you said there's no simple answer, but I feel like that's a real tactical tip that somebody could use, and to say, you almost put on blinders, and for that time that you're working on it, it's the only project in front of you.
Yeah, you're right. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
So
Just
let me ask,
immerse yourself in that project for that time, even if it's the hour that you're working on it.
exactly, or if it's like you're prepping for a 30-minute call. I've seen success with that as well, that even with us, we juggle between different clients, but I always think to myself, this is their one interaction with me. Even though I'm interacting with a lot of people, I want to make sure that this interaction is good for them too. So
well said. Well,
how
very
do
well
you
said.
guys do it? One of the big disconnects that I've seen is there's this vision that the developers have. You know, shared how this is years in the making. Now we're trying to bring it to life with the on-site teams. Anything to speak to that?
You hit the nail on the head with the fact that the developers of this community have been knee deep in market analysis and unit mix data, and they've been looking at this parcel of land which was just dirt and trees for years, and they had the vision, and they worked with a branding company like what you've done in the past to kind of help execute their vision and create it into a brand. And then they share that with us, and then it goes to an online presence, then it's executed to the operations team, then a leasing team is hired. So there's so many steps that are between the developer having that initial vision and when the property is built and it actually starts leasing up. So yeah, I mean, you're totally right. When we talk with a developer and we get to hear their story and hear about the personality of the community, their vision for the community, what their brand is, what this community brings to the neighborhood that it's being built in, it's such a joy to hear, but it's also a big responsibility, because it's our job to make sure that that vision and that story is executed into an online presence, so that the way that I feel inspired after talking with the developer and I feel really excited, I want every user who visits the property website to get that same kind of feeling and get that same excitement. So that's where our responsibility comes from. And then of course, down the road, you know, investing time in training every step of the way, from the regional property managers to the property managers and leasing agents. And ultimately the goal is that that vision gets communicated to the prospects who are looking to rent, and they move into the community.
That's so great. You outlined so many different things there, you know, really highlighting what this developer has been through from that point on to where, and I just think about it as almost like a passing of a baton every time to a different stage. You don't want to be the person that drops the baton after somebody else has done such hard work. So when I hear you say that, and I think about that, with the team, you mentioned this, you know, the excitement that a developer showcases. And I've been in those shoes too, where they're talking about, we're revitalizing this neighborhood and we're bringing X number, and they're talking about it in those terms. What do you guys do in that point to kind of reiterate that to the team? Do you verbatim share what they said, or how do you take that and run with it?
Yeah, there's a very extensive revision process that we go through when we're creating items like the website, or even when it comes down to digital assets like floor plan drawings and what kind of furniture is in the floor plan drawings, or the floor plan names. You know, when we get it from the architect, we have A2 point A and then A2 point B, and you know, we pull from the brand and try to pull nice names like flower names or something, you know, shades of green that come from the brand packet, something to help this community stand out. And the website itself, from the web copy to the lifestyle imagery that's picked out, is gone through an extensive revision process, lots of back and forth between the operations team and the developer too, to make sure that it's aligning with the developer's vision every step of the way, every step of the way.
I was literally going to say that. So it sounds like you're looking at it and saying at every single thing, from something like naming a floor plan to then hiring, to every single thing, the website, you talked about the website before, that every single piece, you've got that developer kind of in your head, on your shoulder, making sure they're looking at it through their eyes.
Yep. And we've made mistakes before. I can receive branding information and receive a story, and I've helped create a website, and the developer came back and said, yeah, that kind of, we missed the nail on the head on that one. And I am willing to accept that feedback and say, okay, what do we need to do? And then we kind of have those conversations as we go. So yeah, sometimes if we don't get it right the first time, just keeping that communication between the operations team and the development team has been so crucial.
Do you find too that sometimes when somebody's telling their story or they give you a brand book, in a lot of ways, it is up for interpretation. So I can see where that happens, where one person is looking at modern one way and another person interprets that as totally different.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And that's when you're staring at your computer. I know you've done it too, and looking at different pictures of couches and different pictures of greenery and, just trying to find the right look. But ultimately, when it comes together, it's so rewarding because you feel like, oh my gosh, we really brought this vision to life, and this community now has a unique personality that can be shared with the renters.
I love that. It's like a building with a soul that has it, like you're saying, its own like living, breathing personality. So let's talk about you've mentioned the brand story and the backstory several times. One, is it important to renters? And then how do you keep weaving things through as they begin moving in?
Yeah, those are great questions, Barbara. And I'm glad that you asked, because there's more and more studies that show that consumers really do want to know the story, where a company comes from. They want to know the history behind the brand. They want to feel like they are choosing, especially when it's a big decision like where to live, they want to feel like they're choosing the correct brand that aligns with their lifestyle and who they are too. So something they can relate to, something that they can get behind, and that is storytelling. We even talk about our follow-up communications in our CRM, and encourage our leasing teams that you don't have to only follow up via email about the specials that you're offering or what the available apartment is. You can send an email to a prospective renter just to let them know, hey, we got our new landscaping today, and it's the trees that were behind the branding story in this way. And it's just tying that together I think it goes a long way with consumers too. And you're right, there's more and more studies that show that.
And I think we're always looking for content to bring to life. And I love how you said that. It's like if a material that you're using has history, or if you're repurposing something, or even, an amenity that's coming to life, the more that we tease that out and we build a story around it, it's like people connect to the tiny details. And I think those are where the points where it gets people excited, because they're like, I can be a part of that.
Yep. I'm getting the warm and fuzzies just from talking about it.
I do too. And I can think about, communities that have been come up from the ground up, and the story is the endearing part, knowing that maybe something used to be a school at one time, or they repurposed this, or they brought something back to life, or they're just revitalizing a neighborhood that felt like it was forgotten. So I think that's so important. But there is a point where the team that you're on almost hands this off to the on-site team and to the residents in a way. Can you talk a little bit about how that continues on?
Yeah, definitely. Even after a website is built, it is not one and done. It's not hands off. We're so lucky, and I'm so lucky as part of the marketing team to be in a role where we support communities throughout the entire life of the community. So we have all the way from pre-development to then whenever the community is leasing up, and then when the community is stabilized, we're still there. We're the same marketing team that, built those digital assets. Things like web copy, social media presence, it's always changing and evolving. You said the words living, breathing, and we use that all the time because as a project develops and grows and changes, we're constantly looking at that to make sure that the online presence and the brand and the story is being changed to reflect that, and it's growing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you guys are in a unique position. I don't think everybody's as fortunate to have a team that goes through them with every phase of the way, but that's probably part of the success. Now, as far as hiring the right team members, you had shared in a little an account, like it's not always right on the first go around.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we have an example of a community that was built just a couple years ago that went through 3 property managers before the right fit just clicked. And, it's something that I think for a property manager and a leasing team to work at a lease up, there's so much work that goes into it. There's so much energy that they're pouring into it every day to lease the community up. So yeah, it takes a lot. It takes the right person and it takes the team to be on board. And yeah, sometimes you're right. Maybe it's not right on the first go around. That's okay. We keep changing and developing and growing.
That is a nice way to emphasize that. Really, I think that's marketing in general. We don't always get it right on the first go, but when you get all the pieces together and you start seeing that puzzle fit, it's really incredible when you have the right product with the right people and then the right marketing push behind it. You can really hit those goals, even in tough markets where there's sometimes the lease up stalls and you have to pivot again. But it really shows how that agility to be willing to make changes. And you also emphasize like knowing when sometimes maybe you don't get it right on the first time. I think that's another really great lesson here from this conversation is that experimental mindset of like, this is what we're going for. If we don't get it right the first time, there can be a second shot at it.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Is there anything as we wrap up that that maybe you want to end with when it comes to lease ups or anything else?
The only thing I think about when it comes to, you actually mentioned keeping the vision alive from all the way through the leasing team. The leasing team, when they do lease up this community, the first residents are always the folks that are going to be the most annoyed with you too, because they buy into the vision, they get really excited. And then the first 6 months, they don't have amenities yet. There's constant construction, there's constant traffic coming in and out of the community and trucks and stuff like that. So just keeping that vision alive and the customer service and like you said, the staff, continuing to share that story for the residents, even through their first few months of living at the community, just to keep everyone on board, keep everyone excited, and I think is really important. So I'm really excited to hear, what you do with this series for your lease up series and to show kind of how that process goes from very start to finish.
Well, I'm so thankful to have you. I don't think everybody gets the perspective of what a regional marketing coordinator does. And I don't think they all know that all the things that you guys are juggling and the unique, position that you are where you have the client as the developer and as the lease up team and the regional team. And so I think it's been really cool having this conversation. And I'm so glad that this time you're on this side of the mic. It's going to be kind of weird when you're listening to hear yourself. Let me just warn you.
Oh, yeah, I know. I don't know if I can handle it. I'll do it, but
you've done a great job. And thank you so much, Kindle, for sharing all of your insights. I can't wait for everybody to hear this.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. I can't wait to hear the rest of the series too. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's a wrap on today's multifamily mix. Keep shaking things up at your community, your career, and most importantly, your life. Until we mix and mingle again, see you next week, friend.